Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where you have joined from. I want to thank you for participating. My name is Patty, and I am your host today. First, thank you all for registering and taking the time to join us today for this webinar on breaking through the trilemma of Oracle EBS Upgrade. Before we begin, however, I have a few housekeeping announcements to say. At any time during the webinar, please feel free to ask questions by typing them into the questions or chat window on your screen. Questions will be answered at the end of the session. Following the webinar, the recording will be available and shared with all attendees. If you experience any technical issues, please visit the Help menu in the GoToWebinar control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Lastly, I've placed all of you on mute so as to prevent any background noise. I'd like to provide a quick background on Appstack. We provide customized IT consulting services for companies ranging from mid-size to Fortune 100 enterprises across a wide range of industry verticals. Leveraging agile practices, Appstack SMEs, subject matter experts, architects, and associates build software applications, platforms, and products that become primary drivers of innovation and revenue growth for our clients and their businesses. Appstack is recognized for driving quality and speed to market when business success depends on the software applications. Founded in 2007, Appstack is headquartered in Addison, Texas, with offices in USA, Middle East, and Hyderabad, India. And now I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Venkata. Before I do so, I'd like to say a bit about him. Venkata, founder and principal of Appstack, has over 25 years of consulting and technology leadership and management experience. Responsible for ensuring overall operational excellence across Appstack, Venkata is passionate about providing exceptional service to clients while creating an environment that encourages teamwork and career growth for his colleagues. Venkata launched his career as an Oracle DBA in the pharmaceutical field. Upon moving to the United States, he was recruited by KPMG in 1998. During his stint in corporate America, he earned multiple awards, including the President Club Award for Exceptional Service at Campbell Soup. And so now I will hand it over to Venkata. Venkata, the stage is now yours.
Thank you, Patty. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are joining from. Thank you for taking time to listen to our webinar on the trilemmas in an upgrade. So here's the main the agenda that we're going to go through: the business cases, objectives and scope, as well as the upgrade approach, and the trilemmas. Keep this in mind: each situation is unique. Not all trilemmas, more of the options are available, but may not be relevant to your situation or your existing landscape. Here's what is happening from an Oracle in continuous innovation process for supporting ERP EBS especially R12 12.2 and X is going to be supported. The premier support is going to be till 2031. 2031. On the existing 12.13 or 12.0, 12.13, the premier support ends December 31st, this 2021. What happens, once the premier support is ended, this December 31st, 2021? You will be executing a support contract with Oracle, which is called market-driven support. Market-driven support includes your SEV 1, SEV 2 bug fixes, as well as your security updates. But you have to think about tiered pricing structure is going to be introduced based on the support contract, and some products are excluded. Again, from a 12.2X, there are many product innovations. ECC is one of them. ECC has been released to start supporting from 12.4. It's actually released in 2018. and many product many product enhancements was also released as part of the 12.2x. Next slide. We're talking, here's the typical architecture looks like between your 12.1.3 and 12.2x. If you look at from an ERP standpoint, it's more of a 3-tier or a 2-tier architecture, right? From a 3-tier architecture, the client, the tier, there's not going to be any changes. I mean, you still use the same Java client, supported on your Windows and Mac environment. But if you look at from the, from the EBS, environment standpoint, there are mainly two pieces: the database and the application tier. Right, of course, the technology stack is going to be the foundation for these two tiers. The major difference from the, let's talk about the database tier. The major difference between your, the 12.1.3 architecture versus your 12.2x is the edition-based, redefinition. It's called by EBR. EBR enables online upgrade options with uninterrupted availability of the application. Of course, your database version, from a supported, certified metrics will also change. Meaning, 12.2, is going to be supported on 12c and higher. When it comes to the application tier, the middleware components, that exist in the 12.1.3, is mainly based out of, based on the 10G, meaning your OC4J, the JSPs, etc. The major change in the 12.2x is your WebLogic services, which has been introduced, and of course, there's some user end user experience UI as well. Now let's talk about the business cases. EBS 12.2x provides substantial value now into the future until 2031. Modern UI experience, rich UI user experience, including the availability of your enterprise command centers, ECC. Let's talk about a little bit about ECC. ECC has been released to start supporting from 12.4 and higher. That's version V3, and now we're currently on V5. I believe V6 is scheduled to release later this summer, about 2021. It has about 100 plus dashboards, in the areas of financial management, human capital management, asset lifecycle management, projects, etc. Also, the 12.2x provides functional innovation, the functional advancements beyond your EBS 12.1x, 12.1.3, etc. The other thing that you need to consider, or the business case that you need to consider for the EBS upgrade, is your ADOP, your online patching, and of course, long-term premier support through at least 2031. Customers that are currently in EBS 12.1.3 or even the prior versions like 12.06, the 12.06 premier support already ended many years ago. The 12.1.3 premier support ends December 31st this year 2021, and support is only available through MDS, like we spoke in the prior slides, for an additional fee. And keep this in mind, it's a tier price structure based on your EBS support contract, and some products are excluded. Additional key drivers for the upgrade: we were talking about platform, ADOP, ECC, taking advantage of the enterprise command centers that are available, modern UI, and functionality. Let's talk a little bit about the platform. The R2, Oracle has announced that 12.2x is the major last upgrade that you would probably see that any of the EBS customers go through. There are about more than 40–50% of the existing 12.1.3 installs are still needs to be upgraded. That means that many of the customers are still on 12.1.3. Moving to, like I said, moving to R12 is the last major upgrade. Delivers ongoing applications and technology stack updates, as part of your, this will be your key business driver for the upgrade. ADOP is online patching. Patches, with the 12.2x environment or the architecture, patches will be applied to your patch edition, whereas while the users are continuous, to work on your system through your run edition, which is your production, instance. minimal maintenance window, to switch from patch edition to the run edition, meaning you apply, to the ADOP instance and then migrating to your run edition. You will, see major, difference, from your 12.1.3 versus 12.2.3 because it minimizes your maintenance window. Patching can occur during the day, business as usual. It doesn't have to be planned, unless it's an extended patches or an version upgrades, etc. ECC, we talked about that. There are about 30, 30 enterprise command centers currently available with 100+ dashboards, as of, for the version 12.2x. Customizations of ECC is possible, but one thing that you got to remember when I say customization of the existing dashboards, you can create new dashboards, etc., but you cannot extend it to create a command center by yourself. And again, depending on the framework, the version 4, 5, 6, the architecture could probably, will add on an additional, operating system, depending on what operating system that you're currently using it. And the key thing is no additional license cost with ECC. As a matter of fact, I mean, there are many other, enhancements or innovations has been released. Other thing to mention here is OATS, Oracle Application Testing Suite. It's also part of your, the enterprise licensing. No additional, licensing cost is required. Modern UI, is another key business driver for the upgrade. And of course, many enhancements across product families, products and modules. Also adapting your disruptive, emerging technologies, into the core modules like, IoT, AI, machine learning, etc. Here are some of the key enhancements by product family. Major differences from 12.1.3 to 12.2x. We're going to talk, more in detail in terms of the objectives and, the trilemmas options that are available. But again, everyone will get the copy of the deck. I'm not going to go through each one, every section of this, but mainly you can see the ECC is, as a major, enhancement, or the, product, enhancement available in 12.2x at no additional cost. All right, what is this, these 40 weeks, right? The clock is ticking. You have 40 weeks, of premier support for your 12.1.3 environment. If you look at, or if you've seen any of the past upgrades, right? Typical, upgrades, as these upgrade would take about 24, 25, to 30 weeks. That means, you have to start your pre-planning upgrade process right now. You have to evaluate your existing environment and see what options, right? We're going to talk about in the later slides. But 40 weeks, believe it or not, a typical upgrade takes about 24 to 30 weeks. Like I said, you have to, that doesn't, that 40 weeks does, include your pre-plan upgrade planning as well as post-upgrade adjustments, and that leaves you with no lead time. And again, time to plan for the upgrade. If you're currently on a 12.1.3 upgrade. 12.1.3 environment. Sorry. Here are some of the objectives that I would like to bring, when you're considering for an upgrade of this size, right, from 12.1.3 to 12.2x. It is a two-step upgrade process. We'll talk more in detail, in the Q&A session. But some of the, our customers, we hearing the concerns is that, they're expressing, their concerns in terms of, hey, should we really do an upgrade, or should we choose an, re-implementation path, or we have, operating, units or legal entities in other, countries, geographical regions, whether we should consolidate into the existing 12.1.3 first or upgrade, right? So, and again, there is no, one rule, that is, applicable to all customers. But let's talk about, an upgrade option, right? So when you talk about an upgrade option, again, there are multiple, components that you need to, consider. One is your operating system, to be able to support for, from a certification, certified metrics from an Oracle, 12.2x environment. And again, how well my customizations will work in the 12.2x environment, as well as, my database, database version to be in the supported metrics, as well as your application, which is 12.2x, right? So when you talk about upgrade, whether should, the OS upgrade, can I do an in-place, or can I do an in-place upgrade in terms of, from a database, standpoint? These are some of the things that you need to, think about from a pre-upgrade, planning standpoint. All right. The second is re-implement, rationalize and re-implement. We have, it changes to our accounting structure, right? Should we re-implement? There may be other challenges, right? So that is also comes under as part of your pre-planning upgrade. And upgrade and consolidate, or vice versa, consolidate and upgrade. Again, we have to look at from a best practices, or look at your existing landscape and decide. But from our experience, and from the best practices and proven methodology, always upgrade your current, and then bring on your other legal entities or the operating units. Let's talk about a scope. What's involved, what's typical scope in an upgrade. You probably might hearing from other from Oracle or other system integrators about, hey, is it a technical upgrade or functional or hybrid? Let me just spend a couple of seconds or minute to talk about technical, functional, and hybrid. Technical meaning as is from your 12.1.3 upgrade to your 12.2x environment. Of course, it doesn't involve include the architectural component enhancements like ADOP, a database upgrade to 19C, etc. Also, from an operating system standpoint, being on the supported or the certificate, certified metrics, from a premier support standpoint. So technical upgrade, things that you need to watch is basically how well my customizations work. Does my personalizations work as is, without have to doing any retrofit activity, right? And the functional upgrade is you do the technical upgrade and then add on or taking the advantage of ECC, or how do we implement ODES, iSupplier portal, advanced functionalities, right? That's part of your functional upgrade. And a hybrid is your consolidation, right? You upgrade, you do both technical and functional, and then maybe help with the M&A activities, right? If you had any mergers or spin-off or acquisitions, that's considered as a hybrid. And when is the best time to do it? Is it the right time to do it while doing the upgrade, or upgrade your environment and then consolidate? All right, here are some of the deployment options. And again, when you plan for an upgrade, there are a couple of options that you can think of. You would be probably have to do from your upgrade planning is on-prem. Should I do on-prem? Or should I do the Fusion SaaS? Or should I migrate to cloud? Whether it is OCI/AWS or whatever it is. Let's talk about on-prem for a second. On-prem, you really need to think about your existing infrastructure, whether it can support your environment, the upgrade or not, right? Some of the challenges, I'm sure you're probably aware, especially from an OEL or RHEL upgrade standpoint, if you're currently on a version 6, and you want to be on a supported, for 12.2x, you got to upgrade to version 7, .x. Because of the kernel and some of the challenges in the way how the operating system works, or is designed to or advertised to work for 12.2x, you would have to do a migration. You have to adopt a migration path rather than doing an in-place upgrade. So again, this is going to be part of our pre-update planning. SaaS is okay, that's more of like a re-implementation. It requires complete planning, also user training, etc. Because your SaaS, it's totally a different animal, and we can talk more in detail in our Q&A. OCI, so again, if there is a challenge in your infrastructure, or if you want to adapt the IaaS and the DBaaS or SaaS, migrating the EBS to your OCI or other cloud platforms, you could you have that option as well. All right. The major differences between on-prem, SaaS, and OCI. I'm going to talk about between on-prem and OCI first, and then come to the SaaS. And again, on-prem is, like I said, it really depends on your infrastructure. So if your infrastructure is aging, that may pose some performance issues, or scaling up in terms of spinning up, because it may involve a migration rather than doing an in-place upgrade. Minimal disruption and organizational change, no additional training required, minimal training required for the business users on the 12.2x. If you decide to use the functional upgrade or hybrid options. Adopt to standard upgrade process, minimal impact on technical customizations. And here's something that you probably have to look at, or consider about your customizations, right? You have to do the retrofit activity, or you have to handle the deprecated objects in your target environment. Coming to OCI, lower TCO than on on-premises deployment. But the main thing that you need to consider in terms of OCI deployment is, what are my options? So the options meaning, should I do upgrade on-prem and then lift and shift to OCI or any cloud platform, or should I do lift and shift to the cloud and then migrate, and then upgrade, or should I combine both the things, right? That could make it a little bit complex. Where you would need an expert advice or experts to come in and help in terms of OCI migrations, but definitely increase performance and faster reporting. We're going to talk about the deployment options, or the provisions that are available in OCI specifically in the next slide. But you can bring your own Oracle licenses to OCI to leverage your existing the ERP investments, or the EBS investments, including monitoring, operational, runbooks, skills, and workflow. SaaS, which is like we talked about Fusion SaaS, right? The implementation of business process. You have to think about rationalizing your rationalization of your Chemleys or RiceW components or your customizations. Migration, you got to think about the migration of data, from your existing 12.1.3 to the Fusion SaaS. And of course, it's ease of maintenance and silent upgrades. It's a seamless upgrades that you from a Oracle and customer standpoint. You may run into rebuilding some of those integrations. But again, a good rule of thumb is, if you have too many integrations like Keywell from shipping, many other integrations, fabrics. Again, you have to really think about from a planning standpoint whether it is the right option to choose, the SaaS option, or continue to run on the on-prem. Again, future is going to be coexistence of application landscape in a hybrid cloud. SaaS alone does not suffice the evolving requirements in some so. If you're thinking about adapting the cloud platform or cloud journey, this is the right time to plan it, using the lift and shift to your OCI. Half of our, the health of our current on-premises infrastructure, it really, like I said, depending on your infrastructure. If it's an aging infrastructure, probably is a key driver for planning to moving to the cloud. All right, as I promised, these there are three major provisions that Oracle, the OCI will give you. There are single availability domain with multi-region, multi-availability domain with a single region, multi-availability domain with multi-region. These are the three available options. And from our experience and the best practices, single availability domain multi-region is good enough for many deployments, since this will give an opportunity. The architecture will give you offers the best DR strategy. DR exists. The most important thing is your disaster recovery exists in a different region. High availability is ensured by setting up multiple fault domains and application servers. The other provisions, and again, this is what we've been recommending, and like I said, this probably is good enough for many many deployments. But the other provisions available within the OCI is multi-availability domain. with the single region and also multi-region. Let's talk about single region. That in that single region, the architecture, all availability domains are created in the same cloud region. That's the thing that you need to look at when you're doing your pre-update planning. But when it comes to the third option, multi-region, that also provides the better DR strategy. Multiple availability domains will give another level of high availability for your EBS servers within within different cloud regions. All right, upgrade choices you can make. So target an earlier 12.2x release because it's safer. You probably might hear, hey, 12.10 is released in September. Should we really consider 12.10 or 12.9? But again, we can probably look at more in detail from a Q&A session. But target an earlier 12.2x release. And the other thing, the rule of thumb is you don't want to be testing for Oracle as well. So when you experience project delay, go on 12.2x -1 or 12.2x -2. Meaning if you're like I said, 40 weeks remaining for the premier support. And if you're planning to do an upgrade, I think do the most proven the 12.10. I know the 12.11 probably gets released before this month this year end, but still I think we have to be plan from a most proven and also stay away from that from testing for Oracle. Benefits of upgrading: get latest functionality, performance enhancements, and error corrections. Minimize effort and complexity of identifying, testing all your patches, CPUs, etc. All right, from a sequence, some of the our existing customers or our prospects are asking, hey, should we have a complex environment, EBS environment? Should we do all DB upgrade, OS upgrade, application upgrade in one step, or should we consider phase it out, like doing OS upgrade first, DB upgrade, second, and then EBS application? Honestly, there is no single right answer that applies to all landscape, but decision is based on what works best for your business. But let me highlight a couple of from our experience. When you plan for two projects, meaning your DB and application, and of course that includes your operating system upgrade as well, if it is applicable to your environment, then you would probably need more downtime. Sorry, when you said two separate projects, you would you need less downtime for for outage, but you probably need more downtime and testing. Simplified troubleshooting and less change per project. But if you're planning for one project, then you would probably it's just more complex troubleshooting and more change in one project. The other things that you need to look at, some of the consideration is, if you look at from a database, 12C extended support ends in 2022. I believe that is July 31st, 2022. 11G already has been ended. So support for 11G, especially if you want to adopt the OCI, the cloud journey, the OCI database services, I think it is still supported, but it is very limited. It is more limited. So choosing a path from EBS 12.13 or even some of the instances, some of the customers, I believe they're on 12, even the prior versions like 12.06. With the 11G and how is you got to think about from a timeline considerations. But keep this in mind: upgrade DB and EBS by end of 2021. There's, like I said, there's no single right answer that applies, or there's no single right way or right the best practice that applies to all. It really depends on your landscape. All right, like I said, these are many options that are available. The archiving, purging and data warehouse, DW is also an option. let's say you have trillions, zillions and zillions of data. We have some, we have few customers that has zillions and zillions of data of order management, and they're asking or expert advice in terms of, hey, should we do archiving, and purging first before we do upgrade, or what is the best practices, right? So let me just explain what is archiving. Archiving is basically saving data with reduced attributes, right? That is your transactional data. When you say purging, meaning purging, deleting data that you no longer needed, or move it to your data warehouse. So it really depends on your EBS data footprint. Review your historical requirements and see what's your data retention policies. Maybe from a statutory standpoint, you're required to have 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. We don't know, right? So, but from a best practices standpoint, if you're planning for archiving and purging data warehousing, it is better to do prior to the upgrade or in sequence with your upgrade. So that's that's what we have been we've been seeing, and it's proven for many of our existing customers as well. All right, some of the technical approaches with new technical approaches is most of your BI, your Oracle, Discover reports, need to consider migrating to BI Publisher, or make use of the Oracle, the EBS Enterprise Command Centers that are currently available. And of course, the Apex, the Application Express is, something that we can leverage in the 12x environment. All right. Here's something that you could expect from a user experience, right? So what is, is there going to be any changes in my UI? So honestly, from a 12.1.3 to 12.2x, it really depends. Some forms personalizations, especially some pre-existing personalizations may not work during an upgrade as expected. In the prior versions, prior to 12.2x, personalizations will come as is, right? So if without losing the functionality, but if your landscape has personalization, some pre-existing personalizations, and if there are many changes, if that particular form has been changed, those may not come seamlessly with the upgrade process. So meaning when forms are significantly changed, so you can adjust existing personalizations in the post upgrade, or as part of your CRP1 or CRP2 or UAT, UAT. You need to ensure that any business logic, with your custom.pll, with your customizations, custom libraries, still functions as advertised or expected. Some of the things that you probably need to adjust and adopt your upgrade methodology. Factors driving the time and resources. It really depends on the size of your EBS functional footprint, and adopting any of the new 12.2x functionality. Also depends on number of modules and the business flows that you need to validate. Number and complexity of customizations and integrations. And again, if we talk about the upgrade, options or the scope, thinking about, Fusion Sas or, OCI, on-prem, upgrade. It really depends on the number of integrations, number of, customizations, whether we could be able to leverage all the custom customizations in the Fusion Sas, or keeping the environment, doing the upgrade, in-place upgrade, on the on-prem, using on-prem or migrate to, right? So then it really depends on, number and complexity of customizations and integrations as well. Many, if you have too many integrations like Keywell, Citrix, other tags, then you have to really evaluate, whether the Fusion Sas option is the right option, for your organization. Other IT changes combined with EBS upgrade, like we spoke about, it may include your operating system upgrade, your infrastructure upgrade, database upgrade, and may also include instance consolidation, consolidation as well. Complexity of topology, multiple, middle tier nodes. You might have, a concurrent managed node separate from your application tier node, and have, for load balancing, right? You can have 1 to n number of application tiers. So it also depends on the complexity. If you have used a single, the file, it all depends on how your file system is being set up. For the code migration, also applying the patches, in terms of multiple tier nodes. And also, the other thing that you need to consider is if you have applications or modules outside of your DMZ, outside of your firewall in a DMZ or a reverse proxy environment, that also could could create the complexity of the upgrade. And keep this in mind: if you're on 12.1.3 to 12, and you want to upgrade to 12.2x, believe it or not, it's a two-step upgrade. What I mean by that is, from your 12.1.3, you need to upgrade to 12.2.0, and then, do the release, the version, right? 12.2x, patches on top of it. And of course, readiness to adapt your 12.2x technology changes, mainly the WebLogic services and the online patching, and how, and how do we maintain, so it really need, technical team skills to be upgraded, upskilling as well. Conclusion. Like I said, each situation is unique, and not all trilemmas and options are relevant to everyone. Forethought and planning minimizes surprises, especially bigger ones. An upgrade is a collaborative, effort. One thing I want to, highlight, or mention in this webinar is EBS 12.2x upgrade. Honestly, is that, it's deceptively straightforward, simple, if your pre-upgrade process planning is correct, is right, from 12.1.3 or even prior releases, 12.06. You would need an expert advice. Since if you're landscape, or you need to adapt some complex, if the complex considerations are in play, like on-prem or Fusion Cloud or OCI. Really it is we need to understand the myths and realities. So choose your partner wisely. So it all, from your pre-upgrade planning to your upgrade and post-upgrade as well. When you talk about, pre-upgrade planning, like we talked about, on-prem, Fusion, Sas, OCI, understand the myths and realities. Understanding whether I should do in place upgrade or migrate, etc. And then upgrade as you do depending on the number of iterations that you plan, depending on the complexity of your environment. Also post upgrade, that does include hey, maybe we should take the leverage the functionality like ECC, replacing some of your non-Oracle, licensing, consolidation, etc. as well. All right, with that, one thing that I would like to highlight, this webinar would not be complete if I don't mention about the customizations. Many concerns that I've seen, I've heard, or we have heard from our existing customers, our prospects is, now, how do I know, what customization? I didn't even have documentation. How much of my customizations work seamlessly, right? So, I'm sure every SI out there has their own proprietary, assessment tools. But we have one of the most intelligent, the assessment tool that evaluates all your customizations, leave no surprises in terms of your 12.1.3 environment or 12.06, and preview a true cost of ownership in terms of what does it take to upgrade, in terms of number of resources needed, in terms of the project planning, and also does nearly 100% of the nearly 100% of the auto remediation. All right, so a great tool, it comes with zero cost as well, All right, with that I would like to move turn it back to Patty to open up, to answer any questions that you guys have.
Thank you, Venkata. That was very insightful. Now, at this time, I'd like to remind all the attendees to ask any questions, you can do so by typing them into the Q&A window on your screen. I do have one question, and I'll begin with that. What is the primary motivation for archiving purging? Shared file system of R12.2, performance of the application cloud compute cost. Basically, two questions in one, Venkata. I'll hand that answer over to you.
Thank you. So if I understand the question, so what is the primary the factor, right, to consider for archiving and purging?
Correct.
So it really depends on the the data volumes, right, the size of your data. I mean, like I mentioned, archiving is periodically saving data with reduced attributes, right? Mainly performance. That's a performance upgrade, indicator. We have a customer that has a heavily auto management. I mean, they use auto management, configurator, etc. Have zillions and zillions of data. You will not believe. We would be adding a 250 gig, database. I mean, the table disk. From the infrastructure standpoint, adding the table spaces, right? Like 8 gig, 12 gig, etc. Every other week. So and again, it really depends on your environment. What is your data retention policy, right? All statutory requirements that your organization should, right? Have. So the primary factor or the consideration for archiving and purging is how much of the data resides in my EBS, how much will have to be the transactional data have to be moved to my 12.2x environment. Can I use my 12.13 and data to for just say if I need for reporting, you could even build a data warehousing. I mean, meaning keep the 12.13 as is. And instead of doing an in-place upgrade, move it to 12.2x and have this transactional data that may be needed or no longer needed for reporting, or etc.
Thank you, Venkata. Question number 2. How do you prep my internal team to navigate through this maze of trilemmas and options?
How do I, okay. So if I understand the question is, how do we, train our internal training? I mean, internal, IT teams. Is that what I heard?
Well, the question reads, how do you prep my internal team to navigate through this maze of trilemmas and options? So I would say yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, so this is more of an advisory solution advisory role, So again, our proven methodology, right? I mean, we work in hand with your departments. It could be your infrastructure team, or it could be your DBAs, it could be your technical team in terms of bringing the awareness of the deprecated objects. Going back and review the code, right? And our assessment tool will identify even to the object level, say, hey, this PO vendors is being deprecated in the 12. As a matter of fact, in 12.13 as well. But there are many customers, environment still uses the PO vendors. So all those things, our the team, Appstack team, will work hand in hand in terms of from each of those stakeholders. It could be infrastructure team helping them to helping them or educating or training them from 12 the version 6 OEL/RHEL 6 to 7. Bringing the training them in terms of the new changes, functions, as well as from a technical standpoint, what is the 12.2x is the from a best practices standpoint, expectations of how the code should be, right? It's not about naming conventions, it's about how how well the code should be, right? So the other, I'm sure you probably started investigating or researching in terms of what's the how the code should be, right? In 12.2x, right? It's all about apps dot, no more PO dot or AP dot, etc. Right? So these are the things that our team will work hand in hand with the respective teams, and make sure we have a smooth transition, or the knowledge transferred, to your internal teams.
Thank you, Venkata. Question number 3, what have been the challenges you have observed in customers migrating to SaaS Oracle ERP Cloud from 12.2 or 12.1 or even 11i? Maybe you can help us out with that.
So if I understand this question, it's more of, talking about of SaaS, right? Fusion SaaS, one of the major, the challenges that we have seen, right? Like
That's
I said,
correct.
it really depends on it depends on your, on your integrations. If you have too many integrations, especially QL shipping, from a shipping or order to cash, it really, so your transition to Fusion SaaS really depends on your landscape. Some of the, I hate to say this, we have in a couple of customers, we have done the discovery, or review assessment, whatever you call it. And honestly, the answer was maybe that the Fusion SaaS is not the right option for them, because of the integrations and other complexity involved in the landscape, right? I mean, we have a global customer in the manufacturing vertical. We have, where they have, which has a single global instance supported by 20+ countries. It's nearly impossible to go to a Fusion SaaS option. So again, you have to evaluate, do an assessment in terms of understand your landscape, and paint the path for, is it really re-implement, using the re-implement strategy to Fusion SaaS, or continue to, safeguard your institutional knowledge, in terms of on the investments on the Oracle ERP EBS, and then adopt the cloud journey.
Are there any more questions from the audience with regard to any one of our slide decks that we can help you out with? And here we go. I believe we have a question coming in, and yes, we do. Venkata, how do you ensure parity with baseline EBS 12.1.3 QA, user adoption, performance?
How do you baseline the performance on a 12.1.3?
How does one ensure parity with baseline EBS 12.1.3? Yes, QA, user adoption, and performance.
That's a very good question. I mean, it really depends. Honestly, I don't have a straight answer. To be, so if you're talking about a baseline, the performance, there's no thresholds that all the farm response or whatever. If you're talking about, there's honestly no baseline in terms of the performance. Honestly, it really depends, right? If you are a heavy duty order management customer, or if you're heavy duty projects, it really depends, right? As long as your tech stack patches and updates are up to date, you might run into we might have to look at some of your patches for one-off for performance improvements, etc. But honestly, there's no straight answer for that. I'm sorry.
And another question for you too, Venkata. Is there a major change in 12.2.8 and 12.2.10 in the HCM space? And is it wise and necessary to move from existing 12.2.8 to 12.2.10?
Great question. Great question. So, and again, I have to go back and look at, what's the major changes, from 12.2.8 to 12.2.10 from an HCM standpoint. Honestly, it really depends on how much, the change, right? It's, if it is a business process change, or if it's a value add in terms of the functionality, great. So, you can. One of the things that you probably need to look at, is the advantage, the more, the functional improvements, from 12 to 10 in terms of like ECC. If that's an added value, sure, that's a minor upgrade, right? It's just a minor upgrade. But if you're talking about from 12 to 8, from a user, a major functionality, I think, it really depends on how much of a change, that it brings from a business standpoint. I have to take the decision. But if you go back to our product, the differences that I tried to put it right here. If you look at from, again, this talks about from 12.1.3 to 12.2x. I mean, not much change, but I have to go back and talk to our, HCM SME to give you more details. Please feel free to, email us, or we'll be able to email to, to all the participants on the questions. I have to go back and check, with our SME. But these are some of the changes that, the product enhancements that we've seen in the human capital HCM, standpoint: time and labor, enhanced entry and processing, HTML dashboards for payroll. Again, those are mainly the key changes that I've seen, from a HCM product family standpoint. Not sure how much was the change from 12.8 to 12.2x, because I got to check with our HCM SME on that.
Venkata, I have another question for you that came in from the audience, having to do with security. How secure are customers, or is customers' data if they go for Oracle Cloud? And does Oracle have access to customers' data in the cloud?
Very good question. It is very secure. I mean, we probably need a much detailed, discussion in terms of, the deployments. Like I was talking about, single availability domain with multi-region, and multi-availability region with, a domain with, single or multi-region. It is very secure. There's no doubt. There's no concern about that. But it also depends on, the environment. If you have a nice supplier, sitting outside your firewall, how well do you configure? It also depends on the workloads, that has been deployed onto the OCI. So, but rest assured, I mean, it's definitely a very secure environment. We have not seen any concerns of, or any of our customers voice their concerns in terms of security. Not that we are aware of. It is very secure.
That appears to be the last of the questions. So I do invite the audience, as we have a bit more time left, to put any questions in the chat box so that we can address them as fast as we can for you before the end of the webinar. And here we go. Venkata, how do I get started with planning for the upgrade? How do I get started for planning for the upgrade?
Very good, very good. So when you talk about a pre-upgrade planning, right? So that includes many components, like your customizations, right? You got to know your customization. Do you have all the documentation, or do you follow the the best practices in terms of naming convention of your, the customization? So that's one piece. That's where our assessment tool, or many, I mean, I don't know about our competitors, but our assessment tool will be able to identify the customizations, assess the customers in the pre-upgrade planning, evaluate, getting a true cost ownership in terms of, the retrofit activity, or replacing the deprecated objects with the supported objects, etc. Right? So that's on the customization. Now, in terms of infrastructure, is my infrastructure aged, aging, or should, can it be supported? Can it be supported next 5 years, 10 years? And I think it really depends on the roadmap. And then database, right? Should I be in 19C, or should I be in, the 12C? And define the path. Or should we consider, the both database and the application upgrade as one step, or should we phase it out? Database upgrade first, or application, or vice versa. Application, first, application tier first, and or application stack first, and database second, right? So these are some of the activities that you do as part of your pre-upgrade planning. I hope I answered your question.
We still have a bit more time left, so if there are any other further questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll address them. A couple more minutes or seconds, if you will. Okay, it doesn't appear as if there's any more questions, but I believe that all attendees will be shared a copy of the presentation deck, as well as the audio recording. And again, you can reach out to Appstack for any questions that you have that you can formulate during the time that you're reading the deck, because you may not have all your questions at the ready right now. But what I want to do is I want to thank all of you for finding time out of your day. I hope that this was insightful. I hope that you learned a lot about not only Oracle, but Appstack Corporation and how prolific we are within that space, so as we can help you. That's all the time that we have today, but please do remember that if there's any question that we didn't get to, please share it with us and we'll address it as soon as possible. And so in closing, I want to thank you, Venkata, for presenting. I appreciate that. And more importantly, I want to thank everyone for joining us today and for being part of our webinar. And I wish you all a great day ahead. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Thank you.